Happy Lunar New Year and welcome to the year of the fire horse. After a quick Google, the fire horse represents being bold, restless, and a little bit rebellious, which might just be very fitting for today's episode. We want to rebel against this messaging that says if I just do this, then everything is going to be okay. And we are, of course, talking about capitalism. Welcome to Spilling the Jasmine Tea, where we're not afraid, but sometimes we are a little bit, to talk about taboo topics, and boy, do we have a lot to spill on capitalism. There have been many instances of experiencing whiplash on this very topic, like growing up in an immigrant household and never throwing anything away. For example, I'd get in trouble for throwing away a bag of receipts from 10 years ago, just in case my mum needed anything from there. And going from that to convenience at my fingertips, like ordering food and groceries, whatever I want, straight to my door. There are so many examples of this, and we're very excited to get into it in today's episode, where Amanda and I share about how these systems shape our work, how we rest, and how we measure our worth. This might feel like a little dicey topic, but don't worry, we're not here to shame or preach. We're here to reflect, laugh at ourselves a little, and figure out how we can cope, or not cope, together. So join us, brew a little cup of tea, maybe in a beautiful glass. Shout outs to B. Lim for gifting this gorgeous oolong and tea set, and sip along as we spill the jasmine or oolong tea. I have a story for you this week.
Tell me.
I'm just going to dive straight in. It's about people reaching out to you and asking for help, which seems like an innocent thing to do, but when I listen to my gut reaction, sometimes I'm like deeply annoyed, and sometimes I just notice feeling like something's not right. So I'll get your opinion on it. I have had recently a situation, someone who I know has reached out. We have been to events together.
Like a professional
events. So we know of each other, but we're not like friends yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they've reached out, like a message. Maybe I'm just being sensitive, but there was something in the message that didn't make me feel amazing. And it was like, hi, Vianne, we've never properly met yet. And I was like, we have met 3 times at different events. So definitely an acquaintance. But I was wondering, okay, has this person forgotten who I am maybe? Anyway, we haven't properly met yet, but can you please help me with this question? Because you work in this field, can you answer this question for me? And I think normally I would feel inclined to just answer a question if it is a topic that I actually can help with. But there was something about that where I was just like, I have this like weird feeling. I'm not inclined to helping, but then all these other questions come up of, am I being selfish? Am I being like unreasonable because this person probably forgot who I was? But yeah, it made me think about that topic of, is this a genuine connection or am I being used a little bit? Because this has happened before as well.
Okay.
What do you think about that reaction? Am I being unreasonable?
Okay, well, firstly, we love a sensitive queen.
Thanks.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with being sensitive, and we need more sensitive people in the world.
I do agree with that. Sensitive to other people's feelings, to their own feelings.
To their own feelings, I think is number one, and then you are more sensitive to others. Anyway, besides the point, what do you think was the biggest irk feeling for you with that situation?
I think the biggest thing was just like asking for help straight out. If they even established that we're not friends because they said we've never met properly, but just like asking for something so straight away, because that has happened to me before where people reach out on LinkedIn or something and they ask, hi, can you review this for me? Maybe it's since you're an org psych, or since you're a psychologist, or since you're XYZ. Sometimes it's since you're Vietnamese, can you check this for me? But I feel like, do we know each other? This kind of work is going to be like a few hours and we don't even know each other. But it seems like the expectation is you've got this certain knowledge, so you have to share it, is how it feels. So then all that kind of came back and I was like, oh, I'm in that same position where it feels like based on someone else's wording, it's like I owe them something. Whereas another part of me is I don't actually think I have to.
Yeah. It feels very transactional to you as opposed to like relational.
100%, because I know if it was a real connection, like someone that I'm genuinely friends with, whatever they ask, I do feel more inclined. If a friend is moving house, we're friends. Of course, I'm happy to help as long as I'm available. But yeah, when we're not friends, but you're asking quite a bit.
And is there like a line? Like if it was we're an acquaintance, a small ask that would take like 5-10 minutes, not a lot of your time, energy and effort, versus something that's a little bit more decent. Oh, can you review this paper or whatever? And it's like a couple hours work. Like you really have to apply like critical thinking and things like that. Is there like a line for you?
You know what? There used to be, but now I'm like, even these small things that seems like it's a 5-minute question, it is like more than 5 minutes worth of energy to answer it. And I think I've seen it a little bit in my mum, where she is so open to helping. For example, when she worked in retail and she had a discount for tech products, she helped so many people with the discounts, and it was so nice of her. But then I saw how it just kept happening. Like strangers would be like, oh my God, you work at that store. Oh, I'm Vietnamese too. Can you use your discount for me? But it just kept happening, and then people kept like pushing the boundaries. So even with family, they would ask for a discount, which she was happy to give. But then it would be like, oh, can you drop it off at my house? Can you do this for my uncle as well? It just kept going. Even though it was 5 minutes of effort, it just like never ended until she stopped working there.
So there's a bit of a taking advantage of from a very loose connection.
Oh my God, yes. We had distant family members that didn't talk to my mum for years. Then when they found out she worked there, just kept calling and asking for discounts.
Wow.
To the point where I don't remember how it happened, but I just blocked their number off her phone.
I love it.
I was like, intervention, the most extreme.
Yeah, because for some people it's hard to set those boundaries. You can dig into that psychology wise. You just think that, especially as an Asian woman, your role is to give, and if you say no, it's selfish.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think that theme of exploitation, especially on bodies of color, I think that is the norm.
Oh my God, you are hitting all the things are coming out. In terms of people asking you for these like little or big favors when they don't really have a genuine connection with you, I can definitely see that. I don't know where I sit on that at the moment in terms of like when people ask me for favors. It definitely happens a lot more when I had my big Instagram account, which is very interesting. Yeah, when you have social proof, quote unquote, social proof, people are wanting to ask more from you. And often it was like, can I interview you on my podcast because we want to talk about PCOS, we want to talk about non-diet approach. At that time, I willingly did it because I do want more people to have this knowledge, and I think healthcare needs to be more accessible and good quality healthcare, and I know what I do is quite unique. So I do want to get the word out there, although there is the kind of later benefit of potentially people becoming my clients, right? But I did feel that it was weird that they reached out for the podcast, we'd meet and do the podcast, and then we'd never speak again.
So basically feeling quite transactional.
Very transactional.
Even if the broader goal was positive.
Yeah. And it was like, I guess there was that thread of, oh, I'm just a pawn. I'm just someone that you're like, oh, you would fit really well in this part of my podcast that elevates my podcast. Thanks, I'll take that from you. Okay, bye now.
Yeah.
Good luck with your life.
Yeah, and how are you left feeling when you're like, I was a pawn in this?
Yeah, it's a bit empty. And I honestly haven't thought too deep into it because in the end, I have my mission and my values and what I want to put out into the world. So that did serve some of that. But yeah, in terms of if I think about the connection with that person or the people, it's a bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that empty feeling, it really is saying something to us. And that's why I come back to that, like, genuine relationships, building a genuine connection, why that's important to me. But do you know what? I think the thread that links all of this together is basically the realities of living in a capitalist world.
Yeah.
And to me, the connecting thread is when we are incentivized and rewarded to get as much personal gain as possible, and usually personal gain is income, revenue, money, then it's like, all right, that's what I'm being rewarded to do. I'll just do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. And what the capitalist structure means that basically someone has to be exploited or suffering at the bottom of the pyramid for people to sit on their gain and wealth and everything.
Absolutely. And we can talk about this for days in terms of like capitalism, right? Because it's the same with corporations and these ultra wealthy people. It's like there has to be some kind of exploitation of people, of workers, to be able to gain such wealth. It was recently where I was watching something on TikTok. Basically, it was early days in the US, and the white person is talking to the government, and they're like, oh, I have this much. What can you give me? The government's like, I can give you 5 slaves. And then the white person comes back and he's, oh, I have this much now. What can you give me? He's, I can give you 10 slaves. And then it just kept on going like that for a while until one day the white guy was like, I have this much, what can you give me? And he was like, we're not allowed to sell slaves anymore, so I can give you this machine. And the white guy's like, what? How am I going to make profits? Because the slaves do all the work and I take all the money. That's essentially what a lot of these colonized lands are built on, off the backs of slaves. Because the slaves were making no money, were being exploited, and the white person or the boss got all of the profit.
And what was your feeling, your reflection from seeing that?
So much anger and disgust. The current wealthy people of this time are wealthy often because of exploitation.
Definitely. Have you seen that kind of philosophy around there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire?
Yeah.
But it's so true. For that much wealth and profit, what happened down the chain in order for that to happen? I feel like you don't have to look very far. My mum still works in retail, and I hear so many stories about what her peers' earnings are, and then stories about people from the top, and basically you can see articles about their profit as a business, but the stories about what does the CEO gain, and meanwhile they couldn't afford to pay workers to have a 15-minute break.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we see so much of that. If we look at industries, we both work in healthcare. We work in private, which is a little bit different, but even so, in public, we have our nurses that are overworked, underpaid, a lot of the staff that are understaffed and chronically burnt out, and they're trying to serve everyone, help everyone's needs, but they can't to the best of their abilities. We can't give the best healthcare because we're so understaffed and making barely enough to get by. I remember I was giving blood once, and the nurse was like, I switched to nursing because I wanted to get a quote unquote respectable job, but I'm getting paid less than what I was getting paid when I worked at Macca's as a manager.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
How cooked is that?
It just says so much about what is seen as invaluable labor as well. It is invaluable, but it's just not valued in a matching way.
Yeah, and in comparison, you have these corporates that are doing really, I want to swear, fuck all, and they're getting paid hundreds of thousands for making more money for corporations. How are you helping the world? How are you helping people? Not really. You're pushing numbers around for other corporates. Whereas nurses on the ground are helping individual people. They're helping the corporates. They're helping other healthcare workers. They're helping everyone in between. And yet they get underpaid.
Yes. I have to find the exact source for this, but I have seen a few articles that kind of talked about the history of CEO pay. And maybe 70 years ago, things industrializing more with factories and things like that, the CEO pay was not so many multiples more than the average worker in the factory. But now, and I think part of the articles were talking about certain consulting firms just coming up with this theory that as a CEO, your decisions really impact the bottom line and everything, and so you should earn that many multiples more based on the value that you give, which I don't even know what that even means. But now, the most recent article was saying that the average CEO of a top ASX 100 company in Australia earns more than 50 times the average worker. But it didn't used to be like that. In my mind, I see it as it's all made up from somewhere of what is seen as valued and then who gets entitled to that greater salary.
And it goes back to what you were saying in terms of capitalism. What is valued in our society? Things and people that make more money. What is not valued in society? Things that don't make as much money.
Sensitive topic to me. I feel so many emotions. I want to bring it to a personal story. Do you have something maybe in your past work experience or something that you've seen where it was so blatant, capitalism at its best?
I have a story within my own business. So when I started my business, I just wanted to help people. And I'd never run a business before. So as I was starting it, I hired a business coach who seemed to be about helping the people at the start, but then turns out her values actually really lied in capitalism. And it was more about how can I work less but profit more. And as a bright, shiny-eyed new business owner and someone who hadn't really valued earning lots of money before, because before I jet off and I became a scuba instructor, that was my life. I was like, I'll be with the fish. I was like hippy-dippy, hardcore. This is my first time making proper money. You start to adapt to the values around you when you're not strong in your own, right? And of course, there was an appeal to it for me as well. I started making really good money and I got hooked on that. And I was like, I want to make more money. Oh my gosh, what more money could bring me and benefit me? I worked until I was burnt out. I was doing some personal healing and it all started crashing down once I was like, oh, these aren't really my values. Capitalism, productivity, like allowing productivity to define my worth is what led me to the burnout. And if I don't want that to happen again, what is productivity to me? What is my worth to me? And it started opening up all these questions that are so deep that it shook me to my core. And I was basically having an existential crisis. And I wonder if you've had this kind of breakthrough existential crisis before.
You know what? Thank you for sharing the examples because I think there's something in that really portrays the cycle of capitalism. In my mind, when you want to prioritize profits, output, earnings, you exploit resources, but the nature of that is the resources are finite and maybe the resources was like your energy. In the other systems, when you run out of like your energy, then you move on to the next source. It's okay, what other resources are there that I can use? But it's going to run out and then it just keeps going down.
Yeah. And that point that you just made is so true, that capitalism makes us first exploit ourselves. Huge.
And no wonder you had a crisis.
Yeah.
If you were like, wait, where is everything that's left of me?
Yes. How do I define myself and my worth now if productivity is not it? And I actually feel blessed in a way that I had that crisis because now I'm on the flip side of that and don't allow my productivity to define my worth. And that brings a whole bunch of blessings, a lot less exploiting myself and a lot more valuing myself for just being me and just being.
Oh my gosh. So my story is like the other side, which I'll explain. In terms of starting a business, being self-employed and having these thoughts around, I was in companies where I felt very exploited. So I didn't want to bring that into the work that I was doing now. And I had this idea of I want my services to be accessible and things like that. So I didn't want to charge too much for the services as well. But at the same time, you have bills to pay. At that point, when I started my business, I was rejected for a low rate credit card and I was like, this is a low point. I didn't think anyone would get rejected for this kind of credit card. For reference, it's like a $500 credit card or something, so I was like, this is not good. And so I was having all of those thoughts. I don't want to make people feel like they can't have access and all of these things. And I just operated like that for a while. When I continued to struggle and when I received supervision from other people in this space, I realized that I had internalized some of that oppression of feeling like this labor shouldn't be valued, that these skills can't be priced at a certain amount. And yeah, when I had that thought, I was like, I don't want to undervalue this type of work either. And just realizing what type of services exist and where do I fit in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Different services exist for people who are at a crisis point or have different needs. There are some not-for-profit, some government services. that kind of exist there.
That face is exactly it. If you're listening on the podcast, you should check out the video.
And yeah, so just like actually realizing how I have brought that in myself. I hope it's making sense.
Makes complete sense.
So yes, having a little crisis on that other side as well.
Oh my gosh. And I completely relate to that as well. Because what I found is like when you're on one extreme side, often you flip to the other extreme before you can really find that middle.
Totally. Story of my life.
I get you with that because then you want to be anti-capitalist and you like the system doesn't allow some people to have access to quality healthcare. So if I don't want to just serve capitalism, then I need to do something against what capitalism tells me to do. But then at the same time, we still live in a capitalist society and we still need to pay bills and we still need money.
That's exactly right. One of my supervisors who is a anti-oppressive healthcare practitioner mentioned when you are solo private practice, the fee that you set, it isn't just that hour that you're providing services.
True.
It covers things like your sick leave. If you can't work, then there's nothing to cover you. You have to consider your own safety net. So there is so much that goes into it. Reminding yourself not to undervalue it. Because I think when I was in that mindset was when I did provide a lot of help to people without putting any price tags on it. Speaking gig, reviewing documents, having coffee, all these things, it's no worries. I'll just help. And that's what I did. But then it meant when I had really supportive people who encouraged me, actually, your services are worth something. If you speak at an event, you are allowed to charge for that because that is your time. And then I was like, oh, now it's hard because I've been doing this without valuing my own labor. Now it's hard to put a price tag on it.
Yeah, absolutely. When you haven't valued it yourself, then it's hard to be like, no, actually, I believe that I'm worthy of some payments for this thing that I've been doing for free.
Yeah, which I see a little bit in like our parents, people who were refugees and migrants. And I think we all have all these discussions about the value of things like Vietnamese food in Australia, let's say, that's seen as cheap and accessible, and then there's so much backlash when it starts to get priced.
Oh, yeah.
Which you said your parents have a bakery, so yeah, what have you seen there?
Yeah, oh my gosh, exactly what you said. But yeah, they have the mindset of everything needs to be as cheap as it can be, so people buy more and it appeals to more people and people don't complain because it's like catering to, you know, everyone else. They make a bajillion different things, pies, salad rolls, they do banh mi's, they have cold sweets and coffee, bread, like so much. They do so much, and it's always like scraping like the least that they can profit basically. And when prices go up, people complain all the time. And it's like you're literally paying $2.50 for bread after it went up from $2.40 and you're complaining. And you're probably working a corporate job that pays, I don't know, 100 that I'm making things up, but
Probably that, yeah.
probably a lot more than what my parents are earning from selling this 10-cent increase in price for a lemon tart that you don't necessarily need but want to have.
Keeping things undervalued only benefits one group of people, but not people like your parents.
I get there's people who are very underprivileged and don't have as much financial access, but you're a white person asking immigrant Vietnamese people for a discount. It's like my parents don't necessarily want to give the discount because they're slaving away. My dad wakes up at 5 a.m. to make all the things. My parents work 6 days a week. They used to work 7 days a week, and this has been for 20 something years, you know, and they're selling things for between $2 and like $10-11.
Yeah. And I think that same customer, rather than maybe going to a place with a high margin thing like tech, where it's obviously sold so much more than how much it costs to make, you're not even getting a discount there, but for this $10 bread.
Yeah.
And the person has such a tiny margin anyway.
Yeah. $10 bread, $10 selection of items.
So like multiple things.
Yeah, exactly. Would you go to Coles and be like, hey, can you discount this for me? When Coles makes what, $1 billion in profit a year, and their CEO gets paid how much?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the imbalance that we were talking about before, where the CEO makes so much more than the average worker at Coles who's working for $25 an hour, 8 hours a day. Let's say normal hours is 38 hours a week and they're getting minimum wage compared to the CEO who probably also works, I don't know, 38 hours, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, who knows? But how is that valued at 52 times what the average worker is making?
So much rage. And I think the other kind of feeling that comes through is this idea that the frontline workers are all replaceable and seeing them as just a number, like not really human.
Dehumanizing
Very.
capitalism.
And I think to me, that is one step to going against that. We were just talking about, we would love to be anti-capitalist, but at the end of the day, we live in a capitalist system. So you can't step away from it completely and still have all the security and safety of a comfortable lifestyle. So maybe to me, one of the first steps is just being a little bit more human with each person.
Yeah.
What do you think? How do you actually counter it?
Yeah, I think what you brought up is so valid. There's so many people in this crisis of I don't support the system as it is, but also I can't be fully anti-capitalist because I live in the system. And there's that existential question of, so what am I and what am I doing? This is the reality for me right now. In the pro-Palestine space, and it's like learning about all these different theories and ideologies. I've often been asked, where do you fit in? Are you a socialist? Are you a communist? What are you? And I'm like, I don't know.
Crises coming back.
But it's like, one, I'm just really learning about all of these ideologies and theories. I don't feel like I'm in a place to decide right now. But at the same time, it's okay to be in this existential question mark place and just sit with that discomfort of not being certain, not having a concrete answer, looking at the things that you like or don't like in practice or in theory, and just sitting in the shit for a little while.
I think that's so important to highlight that, like, actually figuring it out is okay. And there is something capitalist about this need for perfection or having everything worked out.
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a sidestep, but still relevant. When I was learning about the decolonial theory and framework, I was really struggling to understand like what that would look like on these lands.
Wait, sorry to interrupt. Did you want to just quickly define what is decolonial practice?
Okay. Yeah. Decolonial is moving away from the colonial frameworks that were brought into different lands. So for example, this land that we live on, the Wurundjeri land, when the colonizers came, they stripped the indigenous people of their practices, their culture, their way of life, and they imposed this colonial way of living, which involves capitalism, the patriarchy. So that's the structures and the systems that we live in today. And so decolonial is moving away from capitalism, money as God, basically, moving away from the patriarchy and coming back to indigenous ways of practicing and living. When I first learnt about this, quite a new concept to me in the last couple of years, I was really struggling to picture what a decolonized world would look like. And I asked so many people, and the answer that really stuck with me is in the decolonized framework, there is no end goal. That's a very capitalist colonial way of thinking, that this is the picture we want and we build everything until that picture is concrete, it gives security, it's certainty. Whereas when we're decolonizing, there's no end goal per se. So there's no picture of what a decolonized world looks like, but it's the process of unraveling the systems that we have today based off indigenous practices and values.
Yes, I totally support that. The example that comes to mind of the opposite of decolonial, I think about when you're just in your average corporate workplace and you were saying there's this idea of perfect or what you need to be. It's like going above and beyond your tasks. And basically, I think a lot of people have this idea of you start the workforce and you would hope to get promotions, climb, earn more money, that kind of thing. And then when you do everything that you're supposed to do, then you try to get like a performance rating of 5 out of 5, which is apparently really hard to get. It's like very rare for people to get 5 out of 5. Yeah. And then when you're like, hey, ready for a promotion, and then you're like, I'm achieving it, I'm there, they'll introduce like another layer. So if you were maybe like an analyst, you get promoted to senior analyst, and all of a sudden there's another title, manager, and then there's like associate, and then it's, wait, when will you ever actually get there? Because it just keeps changing. And so what you're sold is not very accurate.
There's always a bigger carrot, a juicier carrot that's dangled in front of you.
So that you're stuck.
Hamster wheel.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a very, telling sigh. Okay, let's talk through. Do you have one little action that you do that is anti-capitalist, something that takes back your power?
I like your example of humanizing people and interacting with people as humans, which you think is very self-explanatory, but it's true how we've dehumanized not just other people but also ourselves in this capitalist system. And I think it goes back to what you were saying at the start, the very first story of these people just reaching out for favors even when they haven't built a genuine connection with you. It's, oh, I see you as a prop on my journey to success, quote unquote success. There's a sense of dehumanizing. You're not even like wanting to engage with me, see how I am, like see if we actually connect and build something genuine. It's just, oh, I want to take your skills to benefit me on my path to my individual success.
Which is probably why I didn't feel so amazing responding.
For me, what has been very important right now is mutual aid. So if you don't know the concept of mutual aid, it's sharing resources, particularly money, amongst people who haven't had as much access or financial privilege because of the systems we live in. And so it's different to, let's say, charity or donations, because it's not like, oh, I have more, so I'm going to give to you because, you know, poor you. It's, I understand that we live in a system that doesn't equally distribute wealth and resources. And so as a kind of fuck you to the system and as a way to build community and lift each other up, I'm going to share my resources. And I think that's such a beautiful practice and really a true acknowledgement of the systems of oppression and ways of resisting.
Oh, I think that's really beautifully explained. It actually just reminds me, my mum also told me a story of like when she first arrived in Australia with her siblings and parents, and they were settled in Brisbane for a bit. She said there was one Asian or Vietnamese grocer, and what they did back then was they would just rock up to the owner's house at any hour of the day and just be like, can we swap some things? Like maybe some bananas for these things that we grew in our backyard.
I love that.
And I thought that was so sweet. And it's okay, all of us are struggling financially, but we can help each other with maybe that version of mutual aid.
Yeah, and that was the OG version, right? Like trading what we have for what you have and mutually benefiting.
We don't need to go to the big box grocery stores and give them our money, which can't afford the stuff anyway.
And there's something to be said about that, about like lifting up everyone so that we're on the same playing field, as opposed to capitalism, which is how can I lift myself up and be with the wealthier people and not really care about below, or maybe even exploit them, like step on top of them so I can get higher.
Yeah. Can I explain one more example?
Go for it.
This is something that
You don't need permission, bitch. This is your podcast.
Okay, I will use all the non-stories that I have. I just have too many.
Love it.
Something I saw in Vietnam near the Mekong River. I joined a tour and they explained to me how it works. Basically, there was a bunch of islands, and rather than each family/farm being their own company and trying to compete to get tourists to come visit, they all worked together and they were one entity. And depending on the season, they would bring tourists to one area. So if it was dragon fruit season, tourists would go there, and other families or islands will just do their own thing. And then when it's like custard apple season, you bring them there, but they distribute the profits.
Wow.
And they just work together as a team.
That's amazing.
I found it so beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, a teamwork. Yeah, why do you have to compete with each other? You could work together. And I just feel like it
So
was all lifted
true.
up. So that was what I saw in my eyes. I was there.
I love that example, and that's such a real tangible, like in real life example of anti-capitalist, more like socialist communism vibes, although we know that in every ideology there can be corruption.
Theory versus practice is always different,
Exactly.
but yes, definitely like actual collaboration
Yeah.
versus that idea of like me individually needing
Yeah.
to succeed and climb up, like you said.
Yeah, and I feel like these examples are so much easier when it's in a micro ecosystem as opposed to like in a macro whole country application.
This is the reality. It's an ongoing conversation, isn't it? It's hard to end a discussion on living in a capitalist world. I think it's just, oh my God, it's heavy.
It's heavy for sure. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that and be able to speak to people who feel that heaviness as well, so that we can bring a little bit of humor and lightness. Because I'm having these conversations a lot right now, and I really appreciate them because I think these are the things that are often unsaid. And in a world that does value capitalism, people often look at you like, what are you talking about? And then you start to internalize, there's something wrong with me. If I can't fit into this system that I see all these problems with and no one else can see it, there must be something wrong with me.
The funny thing is that the capitalist system will then try to create a solution to get you to buy that.
Oh yeah.
It keeps going.
You're just depressed. You need SSRIs. You need to go to therapy, but not the therapy that helps you acknowledge the systems of oppression and why that's making you feel depressed.
Oh my gosh. And I haven't even gone into that whole, like, I have many rants locked and loaded about over consumerism and materialism and the system making you have insecurities so that you purchase more stuff that you just don't need, baby Botox, all these things. So there's a lot more to the discussion.
So there's a part 2, 3, 4 and a bajillion coming.
Yeah, thank you for having an open chat together.
Yeah.
It does feel less lonely to talk about it openly.
Absolutely. And if anyone in the audience needs people to talk about this stuff to, reach out. We can connect you to ourselves or other community who very openly have these conversations and very willingly, because it needs to be had.
Definitely. And I would say, looking back to the very first thing in terms of genuine connection and conversation, that's what we want rather than that just transactional kind of thing. But very open to an actual connection.
Alrighty. Thank you, Vianne. This
Thanks,
has been
Amanda.
such a great conversation. And every time I talk about these things and someone else, we can have this candid conversation and critical analysis of it. It's very healing in a way.
Yeah. Oh, so in conclusion, good luck to us all. Thank you for sipping along to this spicy episode. Amanda and I definitely felt the heat there, and just to clarify, the frustration is definitely directed towards the systems, the oppressive systems that we all live under, and not to any individual that might be working under the systems, because that's all of us. We value all different kinds of work and understand that everyone is surviving in their own way. If this episode stirred something for you, we'd love for you to share it with someone else who might be feeling the pressures of these systems weighing down on them. Sometimes just naming the frustration together is a step towards relief and knowing that it's not just a you problem. And if you enjoyed the hot tea today, we'd really love if you could share a review. It helps us reach people across the Asian diaspora who are craving honest conversations about well-being, culture, and the systems that we're all navigating. So until we sip tea together again in the next episode.